Some Sunday mornings, all a man really wants is a quiet cup of coffee, a dense technical manual about drainage systems, and the calming chorus of birds in the forest. But that morning, I got something else entirely. A woman with glitter-streaked cheeks and leopard print leggings, screaming on my porch like a banshee with vocal cords made of sandpaper. "You don't get to sit here anymore," she shrieked. Funny thing was, I was almost certain I was still standing on my own land. But don't worry, keep listening. The way this story ends, you'll want to tip your hat and go ahead and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I wouldn't be surprised if this tale rattles a few folks in your part of Pinewood Valley, too. Now let me explain how a 40-year-old infrastructure consultant whose usual battles involved editing college textbooks ended up toe-to-toe with a homeowners association president who had no clue the storm she was inviting. My name's Theodore Harrington, though everyone just calls me Ted. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Emily, to cancer. Since then, it's been just me living in a cozy little wooden cabin, one that my great-grandfather built way back in 1914. It's nothing fancy. The cedar shingles have turned a weathered gray with time. The porch wraps around the whole place and still holds the hand-carved railings my great-grandfather spent winters whittling. The old windows have seen more than 100 Colorado seasons pass by. The cabin sits in what I like to call the sweet spot of the land, high enough to catch the early sun but tucked under tall pines that shade it from the heat in summer. Emily and I spent countless mornings on that porch, sipping from matching coffee mugs her mother gave us, making plans for the quiet retirement we'd always dreamed of. We'd count deer at the old salt lick my grandfather set out, talk about expanding the garden along the southern wall, and watch the landscape change with the seasons. Pinewood Valley, Colorado. Our little slice of PCA was ringed with pine trees that Emily always said made the place feel like it was pulled straight from a storybook. She wasn't wrong. There's something magical about waking up to golden light filtering through pine needles, breathing in the crisp mountain air, and listening to the creek that winds along the edge of our property. Then, about 6 months ago, the Rosewood family moved in next door and built what can only be described as a showpiece mansion. It came complete with a kidney-shaped pool worth nearly $1 million, waterfalls that run around the clock, and underwater lights that rotate through every shade of neon like some kind of backyard rave. The build itself took 4 months, long enough to turn our sleepy mountain road into a full-blown construction zone. I watched every morning from my porch as truck after truck arrived, pouring concrete, installing high-tech water systems, and laying down so much decking, it looked like a boardwalk was going in. Vivian Rosewood, a self-declared president of the HOA, appointed herself as the neighborhood's tastemaker. Her mission? To elevate the community to what she called appropriate standards for refined living. Picture this, a 35-year-old woman who struts around in sequined crop tops like it's Fashion Week, sports press-on nails long enough to poke an eye out, and wears sunglasses so massive they could probably beam signals to outer space. Rain or shine, indoors or out, those shades never came off. She drove a red Maserati, parked it diagonally across 2 spots, and had a way of speaking to workers like she was correcting unruly schoolchildren. She didn't knock that morning, just stormed up the porch in stilettos that clicked like a metronome and started barking orders like she owned the place. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her tone laced with superiority, placing herself so her shadow landed squarely across my manuscript. "This little rustic situation is ruining the vibe of our upscale neighborhood. Frankly, it's dragging down all our property values." She waved her perfectly manicured hand toward my home like she'd just discovered a roach in her salad. I set my coffee down gently at the one with a chip on the handle that Emily insisted we keep because it was still perfectly good. It then looked up from the sustainability textbook I was editing and responded with the politeness my mother had drilled into me. "Mrs. Rosewood, this cabin has been in my family for generations. It means a great deal to me, and it complies with every local building regulation." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound like shattering glass, and tapped her long nails on my oak railing in an irritating, syncopated rhythm. "Mr. Harrington, I've come to understand that everything has a price, even nostalgia. I'll pay you 3 times market value if you agree to pack up and relocate somewhere more fitting for someone in your position." I gave her the same warm, Firm smile. Emily always said could ease any tension and politely declined. That's when her whole demeanor shifted. Her sunglasses tilted in my direction like a predator locking on, and her voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. At 5:09, her voice dropped low, so low it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight. Then you're going to find out just how unpleasant life can get around here, she hissed. This community is for people who believe in progress, Mr. Harrington, and not those clinging to the past. Her words hung between us, thick and acrid, like smoke curling from a dying campfire. Then, without waiting for a response, she turned on her heels and strutted down the steps. Her red Maserati roared to life and peeled off, flinging gravel and dust onto my freshly cleaned porch furniture like a final insult. I stood there for a long moment, then slowly reached for my leather-bound notebook, the one Emily gave me on our 15th anniversary, initials stamped in gold. I flipped it open and, with a sharp HB pencil, wrote just 3 words: Day 1. Noted. She has no idea. I roused, walked inside through the old screen door that still creaked the way it had since Emily and I first moved in, and crossed to the walnut desk that once belonged to my father. Its surface, aged to a warm honey patina by time and sun, still bore faint rings from his coffee cups. From the bottom drawer, I pulled out a thick manila file labeled in blue ink, Property Deed Documents, A. Harrington Estate, 1914 A. 2024. Inside were more than just deeds. There were survey maps, tax records, historical correspondence, and notarized paperwork tracing 4 generations of Harrington's stewardship over this land. For the first time in months, I smiled, not the polite smile I'd given Vivian, but the smiley, the one Emily used to call my engineer face, the one I wore whenever I'd figured out exactly how to dismantle a complex problem. Vivian didn't waste any time. Within days, she launched what could only be called a full-scale campaign of attrition. Her weapon of choice? Relentless harassment, designed to drive me from my own home. It started with the parties, loud, raucous, and frequent. Her backyard became a nightclub. Music blasted until 2 in the morning from speakers better suited to an outdoor arena than a private pool deck. The bass pulsed so hard it vibrated my walls and rattled the antique glass panes of my cabin windows. And these weren't rare occurrences. No, they were clockwork. 3 nights a week, every week, with the maximum number of guests packed around her glittering, lead-lit pool. Then came the landscaping crews. Like clockwork, they fired up their industrial gas mowers at exactly 6 o'clock on both Saturday and Sunday. Right outside my bedroom window. When the mowing ended, the leaf blowers and hedge trimmers began, creating a mechanical symphony that made sleep impossible and peace a memory. But the noise was only part of it. She escalated. She filed complaints with the HOA, accusing me of releasing toxic smoke from my traditional wood-burning fireplace, a fireplace I'd used safely and legally for over 30 years. Suddenly, everything about my life was a violation. As HOA president, Vivian began issuing new rules with dizzying frequency. No personal items in front yards. All house paint colors had to be approved by a committee she personally controlled. All pets required registration and vaccination proof, but only from her preferred list of hand-picked veterinarians. She instituted quiet hours that just happened to align with my daily porch coffee time and started a neighborhood watch program that coincidentally, of course, he focused almost entirely on surveilling my property. These weren't attempts to improve the community. They were tactical strikes, crafted with surgical precision, intended to make my everyday feel like a siege. But I'm an engineer. I don't panic, I document. I began recording everything, time-stamped logs of every noise violation, decibel readings from a calibrated phone app, photos taken from inside my cabin, showing deliberate harassment. Every call I made to Vivian was met with a dial tone the moment she heard my voice, often followed by an immediate spike in whatever activity I'd just called about. And when I turned to the HOA board, hoping for support, I hit a brick wall. Chairman Henderson, a rotund, sunburned, and always smelling faintly of whiskey, brushed off every concern. Turns out he was Rodri Rosewood's regular golfing partner and bourbon buddy. Mrs. Rosewood is a pillar of the community, he said with a straight face. She's increased property values. Her family's investment benefits everyone. Translation: I was on my own. Then came the day that broke whatever illusion of civility remained. Vivian hired painters to touch up the shared fence between our properties, but the crew didn't stop at the fence. When I stepped outside, I was greeted by the sight of one corner of my cabin painted a blinding, neon yellow so bright it could probably be seen by passing aircraft. The color clashed violently with the soft, weathered cedar that wrapped the rest of the structure. My home now looked like a forest cabin had collided with a highlighter. Vivian stood on the gravel, sunglasses gleaming, a smirk on her face, wearing a blinding sequin crop top that shimmered like a disco ball. She waved dismissively. "Oh, oops," she said sweetly. "Accidents happen when you're trying to maintain standards. Don't worry, I'll sort out the compensation later." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because at that moment, I had already decided. This war wasn't just about peace and quiet anymore. It was about legacy. It was about principle. And it was about time Vivian Rosewood learned what happens when you try to bully a Harrington off his land. Week after week went by, and Vivian's promise of compensation was never fulfilled despite my repeated, polite follow-ups. Worse still, I began to suspect the Rosewood's newly installed, high-end security cameras were deliberately angled to peer straight into my bedroom and living room windows. It was a blatant invasion of privacy, a violation no neighbor should ever endure. The constant harassment began to wear me down in ways I hadn't expected. My health declined, both physically and mentally. I lay awake night after night, ears straining for the next thunderous party or whir of landscaping equipment. My body remained tense, anticipating the next intrusion on what little peace I had left. My blood pressure climbed, my appetite vanished, and eventually, I stopped using the porch altogether, the same porch that had been my refuge for decades. During those restless hours, I'd often gaze at the photo of Emily on my nightstand, her soft smile frozen in time. Doubts crept in. Was I being foolish, clinging to a home where I clearly wasn't wanted? Would Emily want me to walk away and find peace elsewhere? But then, her final words to me echoed back with unshakable clarity, a word spoken with the kind of lucidity that sometimes comes just before the end. "Ted, never let anyone push you away from where you belong. This land isn't just our home, Mia, it's part of our family's soul. Promise me you'll fight for it." That memory snapped me out of my haze. Torn between my longing for tranquility and my duty to preserve our family legacy, I made a decision. Enough was enough. I called attorney Petona, the same man who had helped me navigate the legal labyrinth after Emily passed 3 years earlier. I dialed his number on the old rotary phone, the one Emily and I had once used to share news of our children's graduations and grandchildren's births. As the phone rang, I happened to glance out the window and froze. There she was, Vivian standing at the far edge of her pool, barking orders with those absurdly long nails, directing a crew of workers as they excavated a massive trench using heavy machinery. My heart raced. They were digging right along the property boundary of my property boundary. Only I knew where the true boundary lay. I had spent years studying original hand-drawn survey maps, long before GPS and digital records distorted the truth. I could see it plain as day. Vivian had just made her first major tactical error in this quiet war she'd declared against me. Without hesitation, I drove my old Ford pickup into town to meet with Pete at his famously cluttered office, its walls lined with leaning towers of dusty case files and cracked spine law books. After years of carrying the weight of buried family truths, I finally revealed everything. Through a rush of vivid memories, I recounted how my great-grandfather, Patrick Harrington, a coal miner and Irish immigrant, had purchased 30 acres in 1914 using every penny of his savings. His land included the site where my cabin now stood, and the exact plot where the Rosewood's grandiose swimming pool now sprawled like a monument to excess. Patrick chose that plot not just for its natural beauty, but for its spring-fed water source and its commanding view of the Continental Divide. He built the original cabin by hand, shaping a sanctuary that would shelter generations through war, depression, and progress. But during the 1960s, a serious surveying error occurred when the county updated its land records. The original boundary markers, hand-measured, staked with carrio, were misplaced by county surveyors working off incomplete data. The result: The official boundary lines on file diverged from the legal ones written in Patrick's deed, and no one ever corrected the records. The Rosewoods had built their million-dollar pool under the illusion that they owned that land, relying on faulty county documents. But the legal truth? 40% of that pool, its foundation, filtration system, cascading waterfalls, and even the extravagant poolside kitchen was trespassing on Harrington land that had belonged to my family since before Colorado was even a state. Pete, drawing on 3 decades of real estate law expertise, launched a thorough investigation. What he uncovered was far worse than either of us expected. First, the Rosewood Corporation had submitted intentionally inaccurate property descriptions to local tax authorities, drastically understating the size and value of their land to lower their tax burden. Second, their entire pool complex had been constructed without proper permits, especially those related to wastewater disposal. Third, the project violated local building codes requiring minimum setbacks from property lines. And most serious of all, the pool's foundation had been laid without undergoing the soil contamination testing mandated under current environmental regulations. Each violation wasn't just a legal misstep, it was a loaded weapon I now held in my hand. Each violation carried serious penalties on its own, but together, they painted a disturbing picture, a pattern of arrogance and systematic disregard for the law by people who clearly believed their wealth exempted them from following the rules. Somehow, Vivian found out that I was quietly investigating her family's activities. Her response was immediate and aggressive. She hired private security of former military operatives decked out in tactical gear to patrol the front gates of her estate. She claimed she needed protection from a dangerous and unstable neighbor, but that was just the beginning. In an unmistakable move to intimidate me, Vivian ordered her landscaping crew to cut down several large trees on her property. She timed it so that the heaviest branches accidentally fell toward my cabin, shattering windows. When I stepped outside to confront them, her security team insisted they hadn't seen anything unusual and refused to intervene. The psychological pressure was unrelenting. I jumped at every unexpected sound, triple-checked my door locks, and stopped using parts of my own property, places that had once brought me peace, because I knew I was under constant surveillance. My resolve was cracking, bit by bit, and for the first time, I feared Vivian's strategy of wearing me down might actually succeed. Then she escalated things further. Vivian filed a barrage of legal complaints against me in local court. The charges were absurd harassment, criminal trespassing, despite the fact I'd never stepped foot on her land, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. At the same time, she launched a campaign of character assassination across Pinewood Valley, spreading rumors that I was a dangerous recluse who spied on families and posed a threat to the community. She even strong-armed the HOA board into enacting new regulations like banning overnight guests that were clearly tailored to isolate me and prevent my adult children from visiting. The sense of siege was suffocating. I felt abandoned by a town I'd helped build, besieged in the home I'd once cherished. In the early hours of sleepless mornings, I sometimes wondered if I was wrong to stay. Maybe Emily would want me to move and not to let go of the past and find peace elsewhere. But then I'd look at her photo, taken on the porch she loved more than anywhere else in the world, and I'd remember her words. This isn't just our land, Ted. It carries the story of our family, all their sacrifices, all their dreams. Promise me you'll protect it. One quiet evening, the phone rang sharply, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Pete. His voice, usually calm and measured, was tense. Ted, I've uncovered something that changes everything. If my suspicions are right, this isn't just a civil dispute, it's an environmental crime with federal implications. Meet me first thing tomorrow. Bring every original document you have from your great-grandfather's time. This might be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. The next morning, in the musty, paper-filled air of his law office, Pete laid it all out. The Rosewood pool's filtration system was illegally dumping chemical waste, chlorine, bromine, and more directly into the local groundwater. That groundwater fed the municipal water supply for nearly 2,000 households in Pinewood Valley. A chill ran through me. The peaceful stream that ran through the back of my property where Emily had spent countless afternoons reading was part of that contaminated system. Pete had arranged for independent water testing, and the results were horrifying. Chemical levels 10 times higher than what the EPA considers safe. Long-term exposure posed serious health risks. Even worse, hidden construction photos revealed orange industrial waste containers with hazardous material warnings being buried under the concrete foundation of the pool. Casey, the young construction supervisor, had reached out to me in secret. He was visibly shaken, but brave. At a quiet cafe tilde copyright on the edge of town, he confessed that Vivian had ordered the burial of at least a dozen toxic containers of lead-based paints, solvents, industrial cleaners to cut disposal costs. He had secretly recorded everything using hidden cameras. The evidence was damning. She told us it was temporary, Casey said, his voice trembling, that the official disposal was delayed. But I knew. Those barrels are still down there like ticking time bombs. I was furious, and not just for myself, but for the entire community. I had no choice but to act. Driven by duty, I attempted to collect additional water samples from the stream for further testing, but I was caught. Vivian's well-trained security team spotted me crouched at the stream bank, sample vials in hand, and I knew things were about to escalate even further. As I crouched near the stream with water sample vials in hand, Rosewood's private security team descended on me with alarming speed. Without warning, they restrained me with unnecessary force. Moments later, Vivian, alerted via walkie-talkie, stormed onto the scene with venom in her eyes. She wasted no time accusing me of trespassing and attempting to sabotage her family's infrastructure. She immediately called the local police. Although Officer Reynolds, who'd known me for years, looked visibly uncomfortable, the legal protocols left him no choice. I was arrested for trespassing. At 60 years old, I spent my first night in a jail cell, unable to defend myself or even speak to anyone who might support me. While I sat in that cold, sterile cell with the acrid scent of disinfectant in the air, Vivian launched an expertly orchestrated smear campaign. She released selectively edited footage from her estate's security cameras, clips carefully stripped of context to portray me as a dangerous lunatic. The video, captioned "Disturbed and Dangerous Neighbor Caught Trying to Poison Our Family's Water Supply," went viral on local social media channels, accompanied by hashtags like #KeepPinewoodSafe and #DangerNextDoor. To further secure public support, Vivian went all out, delivering extravagant gift baskets to every household in Pinewood Valley. Each one contained imported cheeses, luxury chocolates, and fine wine, along with handwritten thank you notes thanking neighbors for their support and patience during unsettling times. Lying alone on a paper-thin mattress under the flickering light of the jail cell, I sank into my deepest moment of despair. I stared up at the cracked ceiling and questioned everything. Maybe I am just an old man refusing to let go. Maybe Emily is gone. My children have moved, and so what exactly am I still fighting for? In the stillness of the night, Officer Reynolds quietly brought me a steaming cup of coffee. "Mr. Harrington," he said gently, "sometimes the best people walk through the darkest nights before justice finds its light." The next morning, Peyton appeared at the station with a look of grim resolve and something else in excitement. His eyes sparkled with restrained intensity. "Ted," he said, "I've got good news, a broken bar, and terrible news." The bad news? Vivian just hired Anderson and Associates, the most expensive, ruthless law firm in Colorado. They're known for winning impossible cases. I braced myself. But the good news? In her arrogance, she made the biggest mistake of her life. She's just detonated a bomb beneath her own empire. In the privacy of his law officia walls lined with old books and the air thick with perpesia, Peyton finally shared a personal story he had kept buried for 2 decades. As a young associate, he had once represented a small family construction firm in a lawsuit against the Rosewood Corporation. Vivian's father crushed them with ruthless precision, bribing city officials, threatening witnesses, and deploying legal firepower with no regard for ethics. That same campaign also destroyed Peyton's early legal career. His voice trembled with raw emotion. "I watched good people be obliterated just for doing the right thing. I've waited 20 years for a chance to make this right." Now, he was ready. Drawing on years of experience and a deep bench of trusted contacts, Peyton mobilized an elite team. There was Sarah Martinez, a renowned environmental attorney specializing in groundwater contamination; Robert Chen, a forensic accountant with an FBI background and unmatched skill in unraveling corporate tax fraud, and David Thompson, a retired FBI agent and expert in dismantling organized corporate crime. Together, they launched a coordinated, multi-pronged legal assault, a federal civil lawsuit demanding an emergency injunction over property rights, formal criminal complaints to the EPA over environmental violations, a deep IRS audit targeting tax fraud, and a full referral to the FBI for potential RICO charges against Rosewood as a criminal enterprise. Blinded by her own hubris and emboldened by what she saw as total control, Vivian decided to crown her dominance with a massive community event, the Pinewood Valley Community Appreciation Pool Party Extravaganza, a celebration on a scale the neighborhood had never seen. But she didn't realize the storm we were about to unleash. The party was engineered for one explicit purpose: to turn every remaining neighbor against me permanently and without question. No cost was spared. A live band performed covers of Beatles and Queen classics. Waiters in white gloves served lobster tails and filet mignon. An open bar poured premium whiskey and imported wine. And as the sun dipped behind the Colorado hills, a professional fireworks display lit up the sky. At the height of the spectacle, with nearly the entire population of Pinewood Valley gathered around her opulent pool, Vivian stepped up to the microphone. She delivered a rousing speech filled with impassioned warnings about the dangerous and divisive elements threatening their shared harmony and prosperity. The crowd of over 300 strong erupted in applause. I watched it all from the darkened window of my powerless cabin. My heart pounded with the crushing weight of solitude. Emboldened by overwhelming community support and drunk on power, Vivian escalated her campaign of sabotage to new and brutal extremes. She arranged for sudden emergency maintenance inspections that led to the immediate shut-off of my electricity and water, citing supposed safety violations. The very next day, garbage trucks mysteriously accidentally dumped toxic refuse all over my front yard. Within hours, Health Department inspectors arrived at conveniently tipped off to issue warnings about biohazards and imminent public health risks. And then came the final blow, a temporary restraining order from a family-connected judge that legally barred me from coming within 150 feet of any Rosewood property. Even though it bordered mine, that October night was brutally cold. My cabin, stripped of power, water, and heat, was as lifeless as I felt. I sat alone in total darkness, clutching a worn photograph of Emily. My hands shook not from the cold, but from something far heavier. This was rock bottom. Emily, my lovey, a broken bar. I'm 60 years old, alone, and everyone thinks I've lost my mind. Maybe broken bar, maybe the fight is over. Maybe real peace comes from surrendering to the reality that the world has moved on without me. Outside, laughter from the pool party echoed cruelly through the still air. But then something unexpected happened. That mocking sound didn't crush me further. Instead, it triggered a vivid memory. Emily's voice, weak but unyielding from her hospital bed, came rushing back. "Tata, broken bar, my darling. When someone tries to bully you into silence, you don't run, you stand your ground. Plant your feet, let them see exactly who they're messing with." The next morning broke clear and cold, but this time, everything was different. Peyton and his elite legal team launched their full offensive. A federal lawsuit demanding an emergency injunction on property rights was filed in U.S. District Court. A detailed EPA complaint, complete with supporting environmental documentation, demanded immediate investigation into groundwater contamination. A massive IRS referral outlining systematic tax fraud was submitted with damning forensic financial analysis. And then came the revelation. Casey had agreed to become an official federal whistleblower, protected by the Whistleblower Protection Act. He submitted hundreds of photos, videos, and recorded conversations, all proving illegal dumping, hazardous waste mismanagement, and conspiracy. By mid-morning, Pinewood Valley woke to chaos. A coordinated convoy of EPA hazmat trucks, county inspection vehicles, fire department units, FBI sedans, and local police cars descended on the Rosewood estate. It was like watching a federal ballot of precision, purpose, and power. Vivian stepped out her front door in a pink silk robe, hair still curled, coffee in hand, likely expecting news of my collapse. Instead, she saw her luxury poolside paradise cordoned off by federal agents in full hazmat suits. Across the property line, I stood on my porch, calm and steady, sipping from Emily's favorite mug, wearing, for the first time in weeks, a quiet, genuine smile. I hadn't smiled in months, but there I was, standing tall, a genuine grin on my face as I addressed her. "Good morning, Mrs. Rosewood." "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the crisp morning air. "I believe these gentlemen would like a word with you." Within the first 2 hours of the investigation, the EPA swiftly established a temporary containment zone around the pool area. Their detection equipment had confirmed severe groundwater contamination, with levels far exceeding federal safety standards. Meanwhile, I remained calm, standing with the full portfolio of property documents that proved my rightful ownership of the land in question. Vivian's shock was palpable, as the lead EPA investigator, a no-nonsense woman with a clipboard, explained with cold precision, "Ma'am, our preliminary assessment indicates that 40% of this pool facility is on property legally owned by Mr. Harrington. Additionally, the illegal disposal of toxic waste beneath the structure constitutes a serious violation of federal environmental protection laws, with potential criminal penalties." Sarah Martinez, a forensic accountant known for her meticulous work, then unveiled the extent of Rosewood Corporation's financial deception. They had systematically underreported construction costs and property values, evading nearly $200,000 in annual property taxes over several years. In just one morning, the fraud investigation had uncovered falsified building permits, forged environmental assessments, and deliberately misleading soil condition reports. Municipal inspectors identified serious building code violations: improper foundations, inadequate drainage, and dangerously non-compliant electrical work near water features. With her empire crumbling, Vivian, desperate to escape the fallout, tried to broker a deal. She approached me, shaking with a strained voice. "Mr. Harrington, listen, I understand we have our differences, but surely we can come to some agreement. I'll pay you 7 times the appraised value of your property. We can resolve this privately. No courts, no publicity, just a clean slate for everyone." I shook my head, declining her offer politely but firmly. Instantly, her tone shifted to one of intimidation, an old tactic her family had used in the past. She had private investigators follow Peyton and his family, threatening to destroy his legal career and expose his personal scandals if he didn't withdraw from the case. But in a moment of desperation, Casey revealed the truth that shattered everything anyone thought they knew about the situation. Meeting with investigators under full legal immunity, he disclosed that Vivian had known about the boundary dispute from the start. Her strategy had never been a mistake, it was a calculated plan rooted in her understanding of adverse possession laws. Casey shared documents that confirmed Vivian had told the construction team, "If the elderly neighbor doesn't challenge this within the legal time frame, the land will become ours through continuous occupation." Her words were chilling. "The old man won't live forever, and when he's gone, this valuable land becomes ours legally, permanently." Surprisingly, instead of satisfaction or vindication, a deep sadness washed over me. Watching Vivian's world disintegrate in real time, I realized she had never learned how to respect others, never learned boundaries. Despite everything she had done to me: harassment, legal battles, isolation, financial strain, I recognized in her panic someone who had never known true peace. I understood then that Emily would want me to fight for what was mine, but also to remain the decent man she had loved. Justice, yes, but not cruelty. I spoke quietly to Peyton. "I want justice. I want this mess resolved, but I don't want unnecessary cruelty. Let's focus on making this right for the community, not tearing lives apart just because we can." As the investigation expanded, it revealed that Rosewood Corporation's illegal activities went far beyond the property dispute. Forensic financial records uncovered attempted fraudulent acquisitions of my property, forged quitclaim deeds, and a campaign of harassment meant to force me into selling under duress. Further evidence showed Vivian had used similar tactics against other Pinewood Valley residents, bullying them into compliance with HOA regulations. Even more disturbing, financial records revealed gross misappropriation of HOA funds, luxury cars, extravagant vacations, and expensive home renovations at the expense of the community. The case quickly escalated into a broader criminal investigation, implicating the entire community's financial well-being. A federal judge issued a temporary restraining order against Vivian, ordering her to cease all activities related to the pool and its surrounding areas, under threat of contempt of court. But just after midnight, I woke to the unmistakable sound of construction machinery coming from the Rosewood property. Despite the court order, Vivian had organized a team of workers, cloaked in black, to remove large objects from the pool area, likely destroying evidence. My heart raced as I realized what she was doing. This was her most desperate and dangerous move yet. If she destroyed evidence on this scale, the entire case could shift to a federal crime scene. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and called the police. There would be no more games. After witnessing Vivian's illegal activity in the early morning hours, I immediately dialed the emergency line and the EPA's 24-hour enforcement hotline. Law enforcement agencies responded faster than I ever imagined. They arrived in time to catch her red-handed erecting an elaborate operation to pump concentrated toxic chemicals directly into the municipal storm drain system. Agents from the Environmental Crimes Unit, dressed in full protective gear, documented every detail. Not only was Vivian arrested on the spot, but so were the contracted workers who had been assisting in the destruction of key evidence. Additional federal charges were swiftly added: obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, and criminal endangerment of public health by knowingly contaminating the water supply used by thousands of residents. Following a rigorous 3-month investigation, the United States District Court issued a final judgment. It recognized my rightful ownership of the land beneath the pool and confirmed the trespass had been intentional. Vivian was convicted on multiple felony counts, including aggravated criminal trespass, illegal toxic waste disposal, contamination of the public water supply, tax evasion and fraudulent underreporting, attempted destruction of federal evidence, endangering public health through chemical contamination. The court imposed financial penalties totaling $2.3 million, including over $1 million in cleanup costs, federal fines, and restitution to affected families. Rodri, having provided verifiable proof of his non-involvement and legal separation from Vivian, was granted an expedited divorce. The court also ordered a comprehensive environmental remediation plan with Vivian held fully responsible for the costs. The entire pool had to be dismantled, and the contaminated soil excavated to a depth of 12 feet and treated at a licensed hazardous waste facility. As part of her sentencing, Vivian was banned from engaging in real estate, development, or whole leadership in the county for 15 years. An independent environmental oversight committee was appointed to ensure long-term restoration and monitoring of water quality. The broader investigation exposed how deeply Vivian had manipulated the entire community. Many neighbors, reflecting on their actions, approached me with heartfelt apologies, admitting they had been misled by bribes, charm, and false narratives. HOA Chairman Henderson resigned in disgrace after it was revealed he had received significant consulting payments from Rosewood Corporation in return for suppressing complaints. The new HOA leadership took swift action. They eliminated the harsh regulations Vivian had imposed and instituted a transparent, democratic process that valued every resident's voice equally. In honor of Emily and everything she believed in, I presented an alternative proposal to the court. Rather than demolishing the pool site and leaving it as a scarred memory, I recommended transforming it into something meaningful: a community environmental education center and memorial park. Funded entirely by Vivian's penalty payments, the project would feature a children's playground built from safe, eco-friendly materials, nature trails with educational signage about local ecology, sustainable teaching gardens, a memorial garden honoring environmental advocates. I requested the site be named the Emily Harrington Memorial Environmental Education Center, to honor my late wife's legacy of conservation and community service. 18 months later, under a crisp Colorado autumn sky, I sat peacefully on my restored cabin porch. The laughter of children playing in the new park echoed across the valley right where a dangerous pool had once threatened the health and unity of our neighborhood. Gone were the noisy parties and constant construction. In their place, birdsong, rustling trees, and a restored habitat teeming with life. Vivian had quietly relocated out of state. Her early release from a minimum security facility was contingent on continued restitution payments toward the restoration project. As for AC, he received a strong recommendation from me. He now works in a leadership role at the Colorado Department of Environmental Protection, where his hard-earned experience helps prevent the very kind of violations we endured. Pinewood Valley emerged wiser and stronger. The ordeal taught us the value of truth, courage, and standing up for what's right even when the cost is high. Today, as autumn colors blaze across the hills, I still start each morning with a quiet cup of coffee on a porch Emily loved so dearly. But instead of chaos, I hear the joyful noise of children learning and growing in a space once defined by conflict. Looking at Emily's photograph still hanging in my living room, I whisper with peace in my heart, "We did it, sweetheart. We protected our home and turned pain into purpose. We didn't just win, we built something beautiful." In the end, the greatest victories don't come from defeating your enemies. They come from transforming destruction into healing and building something that lasts for generations.